COVID infection the same way. Some people's immune system is weak, so we have to be our brother's keeper. Talking about being our brother's keeper, this program, Suicide Awareness and Prevention, is very timely. Many people are finding coping with life's issue very difficult. And when their coping mechanism is depleted, they lose hope and give up on life. Now top this is COVID, and we see how compounded the issue has become. Many are suffering silently. Affects the rich, affects the poor, affects African American, Asians, Caucasians, Hispanic, Native Americans. In fact, it does not matter which race the person is, what their education background is. Our guest speaker today is Dory Blanc, and she's going to talk to us about suicide awareness and prevention. We value everyone's participation, so there will be a number that you can text your questions to while our speaker is presenting. The number is 813-510-6826. Again, 813-510-6826. It remains anonymous. No one will know who sent it. The number will be displayed on the screen. And those on Facebook, you can also text your questions to that number. They'll be addressed after the presentation. And also, just a few housekeeping matters. Anyways, we'll leave that. This program is hosted by Passion Mom, Daughters for Zion, which is the outreach ministry of Dominion Sanctuary, Tampa Bay. Apostle Ann is the senior pastor ordained by God to lead this assembly. Without further ado, we want to introduce Dory Blanc, our main guest speaker. And Dory Blanc, she is a native of Tampa, Florida. She's a graduate of Florida A&M University with a degree in sociology. Okay. She has done extensive work in juvenile intervention. She has also done extensive work in death and dying and signs or symptoms of approaching death in hospice care. Most recently, for 14 years in organ donation and with the medical examiner's office.
Wow.
She has over 25 years experience of juvenile justice, hospice, end-of-life care, medical examiner or coroner experience, organ recovery for transplant. And she's married with 2 adult children.
Wow.
Let's give a clap for the Lord for her. So this is going to be very informative.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you so much for having us come join you today. Thank God for blessing me with this opportunity to share my words with you, and thank you, Rita, and particularly, I've been working with Rita for, I think, a little over 4 years, and she has always truly been a blessing with her beautiful smile and her beautiful spirit to match. So today I'm going to talk about something that's, it's a very good and timely presentation because obviously COVID really impacted the mental health, suicide issues, which go hand in hand. But most importantly, how is that affecting the African American community? Because I've been in this field for a very long time, and African Americans' rate of committing suicide has risen very, very high. So we want to talk a little bit about that as well. But my main thing today is to focus on what we can do as a community, as the religious community, but as African Americans, to listen for the signs, to see the signs and symptoms of it, so that we can assist with saving someone's life, because we were just good listeners. That's the most important thing, be good listeners. So suicide is defined as an intentionally causing one's own death. It's a very simple concept that we can remember. They're intentionally causing their own death. But suicide can also be the act of unintentionally signing as causing their own death. Unintentionally could be that they did take medications, or they did things, and they didn't mean to die. That's the difference. For suicide, they meant to die, and they died. Unintentionally, they may have taken medications, they may have did a gunshot wound, what have you, but they didn't intend to die. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. My presentation is real and blunt because I do want you to know how it really is and how it really works behind the scenes. Because what you see on TV, what you watch on the news, does not give you the facts. It gives you what the public wants to hear. So let me just put that out there. I will give you, be very respectful of the language and the terms, but it's a real experience. So as Rita mentioned earlier in her presentation, intentional does not care who it is. They don't care what your education level is. They don't care what age, race, religion, faith base, culture, ethnic group, income level, social status, mental health status. It does not matter. Suicide affects everyone. And the same thing with unintentional. The difference between intentional and unintentional simply means unintentional was a mistake. They didn't mean to do it. They may have done it to get your attention, and they're reaching out for help, but it was a mistake. They didn't mean to do it, but they died. So the causes of suicide are varied. The most common one is depression, and that's the one we can help and look out for. And they come in several forms of depression. It could be temporary. Maybe somebody moved or someone you know very close to you, something happens to them, and they become depressed, but it's not for a long period of time. They also, it may be acute. I lost my father 3 years ago, and I was depressed for about 2 to 3 months until I could reconcile with his recent death. Ongoing feeling of hopelessness, and there's no resolution. That's the dangerous one, where there's nothing that can be done. I don't care who they spoke to, who they met with, what medications were put on, that they took. It's ongoing, and it has to be either medicated, it has to be group therapy sessions or their own their own physicians, but it's ongoing and it's not going to be cured. Another cause is anxiety. With anxiety, they're not sure of an outcome, so they panic about any kind of situation, and they feel like they can't control the situation. And we all go through that. I'm sure everyone in this room has been through a situation like that. There's nothing wrong with having anxiety. What the issue is, how do we control it? Because let's face it, some of us always feel like we want to be in control. That's just how it is. Acute incident. So what that means is people can have a loss of a child or a spouse or a parent or a best friend or church member. So that's what an acute incident is. And most likely you will recover for it. It's something that, and it may take you years to recover for it, but it was acute incident. Despondency, knowing that reality that they cannot get out of a situation, so they become despondent. And that was probably the cause of many of the mass shootings that we've had in this country, including the one yesterday. That person felt despondent, and they felt like there was no reality that they could get out of a situation. Those are also commonly known as, this young man recently he wanted to get shot by cop suicide or police suicide. He wanted to create that situation where he was involved in something criminal, and he wanted to be shot by the police. Grief. Grief means you cannot handle a loss. Now, people think of a loss as just death. And it's not just death. It could be a death, or it could be a loss of a job, and COVID. COVID has involved in a lot of stuff for the last couple of years, or for the last year. It could be a loss of a job, which a lot of people that we know, even yourself and your family members, lost a job. It could be a move. Again, people had to move during COVID because they may have lost their apartment, home, or what have you. Loss of anything significant that impacts your life, you will have grief. Now, keep in mind, people grieve differently, okay? I didn't cry when my father died because I knew my father was in a better place. I also knew at that time my dad was not able to be as active as he was, and he was depressed about it. And so for me, it was a relief that he was in a better place with God. So how do people commit suicide? I'm sorry, let's go back over. I'm going to go back over one more thing which I forgot about earlier to put on this, is one other cause of of, suicide that is very common in our community is sexuality. Now, the African American community, we didn't do too well with, especially young men or men, coming to grips with their sexuality, okay? Because we, as a community, pushed them away or didn't accept them as being in a same-sex relationship. You know, grandmother would say, oh, there's nothing wrong with him, he's just going through a phase, he'll grow out of it, or she'll grow out of it. And I will tell you that most of the suicides that I was investigating at the medical examiner's office, they often leave a note, and that note is evidence. And a lot of the African American suicides that I come in contact with were young black men whose family did not accept them because of their sexuality, or who their church or faith-based community did not accept them or accept their sexuality. So that is a huge number of people, black, white, Asian, whoever, that committed suicide because of their faith-based community or their community in a whole, and sometimes their own family, sometimes their parents did not accept their sexuality. So my advice to you is, if you know someone, whether it's your family, your coworker, whoever, who is struggling with their sexuality, you may not agree with it through your religion or your own feelings, but at least make them comfortable. And you can say to them, I don't agree with your sexuality, I don't agree with who you're with. However, that is my personal feelings, and I accept if that's what that makes you happy, that's the way you want to live. So be very clear to them that you don't agree with it, but I love you for who you are. Okay? It is okay not to like what they're doing, but it is better for you to tell them, I love you for who you are. Because I cannot tell you how many black men we lose because of that. Okay? Alrighty. So the mechanisms of suicide. Hangings. Those are probably the most, last year, since COVID, there's been a 25% increase in hangings.
Wow.
And here's the difference. The number one group population that were hangings in and I would say 20 years has always been white males, okay? And they will go out in the woods and hang themselves.
Oh.
Now, in the last 3 years, women. Now, we're very vain women. We know that's not good. That's not, God wants us to be vain. But we were so vain, we just take pills and just die beautifully, just going to sleep away to death. But now we're starting to shoot ourselves in the head. You know, unfortunately about that is if you don't shoot correctly, you're just gonna mess up your face, shattered, or you're gonna be in a facility for the rest of your life. So with hangings also, women never hung themselves. Again, we're vain. And hangings is not the most attractive death, trust me, it's not. And also popular is with hangings, you have a divorce situation and custody situation, and the man now goes in the garage, or female, and hangs himself to where he wants the shock value to his ex-wife, who's having a bitter custody battle, but forgets that she went to pick up those kids from school. So not only is she going to see that the grotesque results of hangings, those kids are in the car, and those kids are going to see that. And that's the last thing that's the last way they're going to picture their father or mother. So that, and again, the whole hanging thing has evolved. So you've seen celebrities do it. Most of the hangings the other population that we're seeing is your 12 to 15 area where they're bullied. And they will go in their closet and hang themselves. Also, bullying. Go in a closet, hang themselves because they were being cyber-bullied. Parents had no idea that they were being bullied. And so they hang themselves. My youngest one that I've encountered was 13 years old. Parents had no idea that they had been bullied. believed. Overdose, obviously, overdose medications, whether they're prescribed or through street pharmacists, and street pharmacists is my name for, drug dealers. And so these can be intentional or unintentional, but the overdoses are very, very, very common. They are happening often. Heroin is now coming back as the drug of choice. And the medical community carries a drug called Narcan that they administer on site if there's an overdose, and hopefully that overdose can be turned around. But unfortunately with overdoses now, they happen, again, it doesn't matter what age, ethnicity, religion, they can get their hands on it and they will overdose. And again, if you don't completely overdose yourself, whatever you're running from, you're gonna make yourself worse off. Because if you don't completely die, so to speak, you are going to end up in a facility for the rest of your life. So what's more painful for you? To live through this and have counseling or whatever you need, or shoot yourself or overdose yourself and then you're stuck in a community living facility. Gunshot, as I talked about earlier, women, we didn't do this, but now, very common. Tampa General York Trauma Center here in Tampa probably gets 3 or 4 gunshots a day. Because it's common. So what we're struggling as a county right now, a country, with the gunshots, those guns are, the people that we see, those guns are not bought with a permit and buy them at a store or what have you. Those are guns off the street that they can get their hands on, and they're shooting themselves. But again, if you don't get the correct angle, you're gonna live, and it's going to not be pretty. Poison, yes, poisoning is still going on. They do poison themselves or know how to poison themselves. Asphyxiation is strangulation, okay? Think of George Floyd, what they're fighting with right now on his case. But strangulation can also be a way of kind of a hanging, but it's more sometimes depending on how it's done. And then also, if you think of Kate Spade, a celebrity who hung herself, she knew just what angle she had to get to make herself asphyxiate, which is hanging as well. Drownings. Drowning is probably besides burn, probably it's the most painful and struggle for someone to. I don't know why people would choose to drown, because you're basically just waiting for your lungs to fill up with the water. But we are finding in men do that quite a bit. And it is, again, the shock value of you throw yourself in a pool and your kids and your family comes home and sees you in the pool. But we also have people that just walk in the ocean and just drown on purpose. So are there any questions at this point with the mechanisms of suicide and the types of suicide? Any questions? Okay. So what are the signs and symptoms of suicide? Did you? Okay.
I was going to ask you a question about signs and symptoms, but go ahead.
Okay. So signs and symptoms of suicide: giving away and prized possessions. It may be significant to them, but not you. So don't like, if you may brush it off like, oh, okay. But again, it could be significant to them, but not to you. So the best thing to do is to listen to them and don't brush them off. However, what you should do is thank them and then ask them, is there a reason you're giving me this? Okay? That way they know you accept it and you're listening to them. I know this is your favorite jersey. Is everything okay? Do you need to talk about something? Let's talk about how you're feeling. I know how much this jersey means to you, so I'm curious about why you're giving it to me. That way you're probing and you're pulling the information out of them, because you want to know, hey, what's going on? And it may not be that they're thinking about suicide, but at least you're engaging them and you're showing them that you do truly, you really care about them. So, clinginess. You know, my kids are young adults, but they're not the most affectionate, so if they are, then I know something's wrong. And I do, I start asking questions, you okay? You know? So if they show affection back and ask them if they are okay. So if your kids are normally clingy and huggy, kissy feeling, that's fine. But if you're like those kids, like my 22-year-old, who has never been a hug, kiss kind of kid, if he starts doing that, then I know there's something going on, okay? You don't have to ask them if they want to talk. You tell them that you're going to talk to them. Let's talk about it, especially if they're not affectionate. And again, that could be a sign of bullying, and they are reaching for your attention and love. So engage in that. Ask them what's going on. You know, talk about it, and be specific about school or work. Because if they're an adult, work or whatever else they're involved in. If it's school, talk about what's going on with school, because if they start behavior changes and patterns, that's a sign that there must be something going on. Keep your guidance counselor, your schools engaged, your social workers, call them and say, hey, I had this experience with him. Do you think it's anything serious? Should you call them in and talk to them? Keep engaging in your child's school. Behavior changes. Sometimes, you know, we have that bad day and we're in a mood and we're going through some things. I understand that. But if it's a drastic change, then something may be wrong. You want to make sure they're not going to harm themselves or harm others. Okay? Rita knows if there's a Baker Act situation where they may hospitalize that patient, but we want to make sure that that whatever the change is, if it's drastic, you need to get help immediately. That like that mother did, that the latest shooting, that mother called FBI and told them that he is probably trying to die by cop suicide. Now, they didn't do anything about it, but look what happened.
Wow.
Okay, so that mother was paying attention to the changes in behavior of her son, and she also listened to him talk enough for her to realize, you know what, this is not good, and she called authorities. So she did what she was supposed to do.
Right.
Unfortunately, though, apparently they didn't think it was a risk, and now those agents are probably like, why we didn't catch that? So they're going to get in trouble for that. But that mom did what she was supposed to do. And actually, several of the mass shooting victims' parents reported some behavior changes, and unfortunately, it didn't turn out too well. So suicide in the Black community, as I said earlier, it is on the rise, okay? And a lot of them are what we call botched suicides or unintentional suicides, and that's really rising because of cocaine and heroin use. Military vets coming back from the previous wars, and they just have those demons. They have PTSD. And so that's why you have so many vets coming back that have those PTSD symptoms. Yes, they can get treated at the VA, but the VA doesn't really do a lot for mental health. And that's the problem. That's the problem. Yeah, they can go get physical help, but there are so many vets. There's not a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists to treat their mental health. And mental health assistance versus religion. Now, when you have to be able to tell when it's mental health assistance versus religion, because you can do both at the same time, okay? And so a lot of times the Black community will say, well, we can have the pastor talk to them, and that's fine, but you also need to have mental health assistance as well, okay? Because it's not a spiritual religion or what have you type of situation. It is, in general, it has to be a combination of things. So, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So suicide in religious faith-based community. As you know, I know I can say that for my family, there's always this one uncle or cousin or whatever that we all thought, oh, there's a little something right here that's not right. And it could have been that one that was a vet, and then never recovered, been the same since he fought in the Vietnam War. And grandma said, oh, y'all leave him alone. Y'all just know he's a little touched, as my grandmother would say. He's a little touched. So we all have that one cousin or uncle. And we never really went to get help. It's getting better now. The Black community is now accepting mental health. But we never, in our culture, we kind of shunned away from mental health. But the mental health issues are real. They are real.
Yeah.
And I was the first one in my husband and I were like, I don't believe in giving medications to my kids. All they needed was a good spanking on the butt. But it's more than discipline. It's more than that. So what we have to do is we have to bridge that gap and come together with mental health issues, addressing mental health issues and the church, because it can be together. What is not going to work though is just religion. It has to be both. Spiritual wealth and mental health has to work together. It can be working together. So I am 100% an advocate of spiritual leaders and mental health professionals. Those mental health professionals need to be licensed mental health counselors, psychologists, or psychiatrists. And I know we don't like to do it. Trust me, like I said, as a mom, they called me one day and told me my son needed to be tested. And I said, nope, I'm just trying to label my son for the rest of his life. I don't want him on medications or anything. And it wasn't until he was 15 that we realized that he said, I need help. And he turned out to be ADHD. And it's a different person now that he takes his medication. He takes Adderall, and he's a different person.
Wow.
So I really believe in it now. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. And I was one of those moms, nope, you're not gonna medicate my child. Nope, he just needs a good spanking. But now, so in conjunction with our spiritual leader and the psychology and counselor, and identifying that he needed Adderall, that helped out 100%. So please, 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 spiritual leaders and mental health professionals can work together. In addition, if your child or your spouse, whoever, needs medication, I strongly encourage it. And don't let it be a label, because medication obviously needs to be there. And we find so many situations where the suicide could have been prevented if the family had listened, if the parents had enlisted help by mental health professionals and not just spiritual leaders, or if the family had known that the person had another side of them, and they had different different ideas of what was going on in that child's head. So the risk groups are boys 12 to 17, and that usually are cyber and school bullying, and they most likely will choose overdose or hangings. Men between 17 and 30 is what we see a lot, and they feel hopelessness, and they usually overdose on drugs. The popular drugs now obviously are heroin, laced marijuana. And what do I mean by laced marijuana? Laced marijuana means marijuana is not going to hurt you. I hate to say that because I have a 22-year-old son. But you notice how many states are now legalizing marijuana. Marijuana is not going to kill you. It is not going to do anything to you. Marijuana is safer than alcohol. What is going to kill them, though, is that they lace it and they soak it in heroin or other things. That's what's going to kill you. And so the overdoses occur when the heroin, it's supposed to be heroin, but it really isn't. So we track the street pharmacists and drug dealers is now moving towards this way. They started in Manatee County. It was 3 of them, 3 street pharmacists, and 2 of them got caught when he came up over here to the Brandon area, and then he now is in the Bayonet Point area, And I know that because there were 7 overdoses in one night. And they were all his sales people. Now, the number one rule in drug dealing is you don't take
Use your
your
product.
product. You don't use your own product. That's number one rule. So, and that's how we can track them. So he left that area, he's coming more on this area right now. So when I start seeing at one of my hospitals, Advent Health Tampa, or if I start seeing at Wesley Chapel, then that's how I know he's back into it, and he has, now his people are taking the drugs. And again, you don't take your own drugs if you're selling it. So the people who are taking it think that they're taking heroin, but what he does is his baggies, and it is white powder, they think, but what it is you and I can go probably 5 miles down the street to a feed store and buy a big bag of horse tranquilizer, okay?
That's right.
And it's for $35. Then he cuts it back, and then he mixes in baking soda, baking powder, so it looks like heroin. And so then you have a 135-pound woman that buys that bag. He's probably made $100 off of that one bag that he probably paid. He probably took him like $5 to make that one bag. And she takes it. And now, if that horse tranquilizer can put down a 700-pound horse, what do you think that can do to a 135-pound woman? It is going to take her out, literally. So that's what I mean by the overdoses. These men are also ones that can't find a job after they graduate from high school, or they're out from college, and they don't know any better. This is their way of coping with it, is to drugs and overdose. So. And then your men between 35 and 60, they are now struggling, especially with COVID, lost their jobs, got divorced because of it. They're losing their custody, and they mostly do hangings and gunshot wounds. It's very common for us to say, even at Tampa General, oh, it's 5 o'clock on a Friday, we're gonna be busy. Why? Because that's when I find out that he lost his job. And this group right here normally is, before COVID, it has always been the issue of men losing their jobs during this time. So it's worse now with COVID, with so many people out of work and being laid off. And we won't even go into the politics about that. But they do have serious implications when those happen. And we talked about how the hangings and gunshots go. Girls from 12 to 17, the cyberbullying and the school bullying and dealing with body images and overdosing and hanging themselves. The body imaging one is very, very, very hurtful, because and I tell this when I do some classes for some girls and boys, is that if you look at the types of girls that you're idolizing, like, Kardashians, not this is where the body type should be, and I said, look at yourself and look at them. What do they continually look like? What are you idolizing about them? They're so beautiful. Yeah, but look what they have done to their body. What they've done to their body is to look like what we look like. We have that curvaceous body. They did, what they built on our body is what we have. Our African Americans, we have the hips and the butt that they got. We've got the full lips. We've got the hair. They're trying to emulate you, but so don't compare your body image to them. So I tell them, so all these women are going to get implants, and we have it naturally because that's who we are. We are from African descent. So yes, we're going to have the big bottoms and the full lips. And I said, so be proud of who you are, your heritage, your body image and your heritage. You should be proud that they're trying to look like you. So the other thing about girls is, and if you have girls this age and even boys, please be on the lookout on these following things. So we also see foreign objects. The girls or boys are doing, and even if you have grandkids, just looking out for them. So the foreign objects are hidden on purpose. So they could be feminine products, soaked in liquid heroin or liquid, any kind of liquid any kind of drug or alcohol. My kids would, when my kids were in high school, they had to talk to us after they came back from a party, and so my husband and I can smell the alcohol in their breath if they had drank. Well, when the girls put their the feminine products in the boys and men, they soak them and they put them where girls should be putting them, and the men and boys are putting them in their anal area. And when they do that, it metabolizes different. It's called the back door, where the men put them. I was just trying to be a nice way to say it. You had to translate for it.
I had to.
Okay, so those two areas metabolize very quickly because they're thin layers, and it also, you can't smell the alcohol. So that's how the kids get over on that.
Wow.
And so they can get a quick high or low depending on what they soaked it in, and no one can tell. Yeah, so it's interesting. And we pulled that a couple of times. And you know the little thread bracelets they have, little thread, the cute ones. So Jason's grandmother had hip surgery, and he's going over to visit grandma. And he knows that she has a fentanyl patch that she uses, and when you throw them out, it still has about a couple of, not like 40% or so, fentanyl in it. So they take it home and they boil a tea. They make a tea out of it. And then they soak the bracelets in there, and it absorbs the fentanyl, and they sell it. They use it, depending on the drug, it'd be low or high, and they use the bracelets in school, and they just sell them and make good money off of it.
New generation. Well, we don't
Yep, so keep an eye on your kids. And overdoses, and this would also be an intentional and an unintentional overdose as well, because the girls don't really know that what's in there, and it's sad. And then women, because we are body image and overwhelmed with school, divorce, take care of family, and they don't feel purpose in their life, so they overdose in hangings and gunshot. These are, believe it or not, are a lot of soccer moms. When you spend your life taking care of the kids, and your husband's working, and you just feel like you have no purpose but just take care of kids, and especially when you get to that point where the kids are old enough and they go to high school, whatever, and they don't have to take them to school anymore, and they just stop and think about it. I have no purpose. I haven't worked in years. I don't, I really don't have a purpose in life, So it's just that. So, and so yeah, those are things that you should just look at when you're dealing with your kids or youth. The kids are very smart nowadays. You have to stay one step ahead of them but the thing that, and I want to end on this, is listen. Be an active listener.
Sure.
You have to be an active listener, because if you don't, you may not know what's going on inside someone's head. And think of the comedian Robin Williams. He smiled all the time. He was so funny, and and everybody loved his movies and everything. So you wouldn't think that there's anything going wrong with him, and he ended up committing suicide. He had severe depression. So yes, he may have had a smile on his face and made people laugh, but he was hurting inside. And I'm telling you, like Kate Spade made all this money on purses and clothes, and she hung herself. So I'm telling you that you can't, just because someone smiles does not mean they're happy. They may not be happy. And so as a spiritual community like yourself, be aware, listen, talk, and it's so important to be that, because like I said, when they come to the medical examiner's office, they have a note, and that note is evidence. And what we hear a lot is that no one listened to them. Or I have the parents, and the parents like, I had no idea he was having these issues in school, Well, that's because you were not on his Instagram page, or you were not on TikTok page, and, and he didn't tell you that he was upset, but, or if they're out of their routine, think about that. So I've had some parents, but we took the door off of his room so we can keep an eye on him. Well, you know what? Are you on his computer though? I mean, how many parents check their kids' computer? I know I didn't. I just assumed that they were doing their schoolwork, So you just have to be really cognizant of that. But again, I stress to you as a religious community, it is totally okay to provide that support, but also include your mental health professional if you see that need. Take them in prayer, take them to the altar, but also include some spiritual as well as medical if needed. Some people can just do support groups. It just depends on where they are. The support groups are great. I love support groups. No, one-on-one counseling is really good, but sometimes family counseling, couples counseling, couples should be both people. Couples counseling does not work if it's just one person there. There's no use of going. Group counseling is good as well, because when you see groups, you're like, oh wow, I'm not the only one that feels that way, So family counseling, same thing. Everybody involved needs to be in that group. Okay, so I think we're ready for questions, if we have them.
You got a lot on my mind, so right now, just give me 1 second.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, a lot, during this society that we live in now, a lot of people don't want to come forth because they don't trust, the government.
Right.
So how do you try to get the person the help that they need without, going that far?
Right.
Because you don't know. Once you try something crazy, they lock you up. Throw away the key, and hopefully one day, and then I don't know how to get a person help without, putting their business out there, because
Right.
they're scared they might lose their children, they're scared they might, and,
That's
how
good.
do you do that?
Yeah, so I always suggest, if there's kids involved, I always suggest starting with the school counselor. If they have, schools should have school counselors and social workers. So I always suggest, and it's free. So I always suggest there first. If that's uncomfortable, then at your place of employment, usually in your EAP, which is Employee Assistance Program, they usually offer free mental health, and not just for you, but for whoever else is involved. So look for your EAP, and that's usually free as well. If it's behavioral related, sometimes some insurance companies don't cover behavioral, but they'll cover mental, which is good. So look for that as well, and it should be free. If that doesn't work, you can get a private one-on-one psychologist or psychiatrist, but I'll be honest with you, until it's not cheap. But your insurance company may reimburse you or cover it. So, but you're right, it's suspicious with government. I know you all are at some point discouraged about that, but even if you are on it, look, if you have Medipass or anything like that, they also offer mental health, and unfortunately, that's through the government. So, and if it's done correctly with HIPAA, no one would know that that person's there getting services. Yeah, right. Because HIPAA shouldn't allow that. They shouldn't be discussing your case with anybody. So, hope that helps. But yeah, but if they do, then they're violating HIPAA, and they're going to discontinue their contract. Is that helpful? Okay.
Alright, that's a question. It says, what should you do if someone tells you they're thinking about suicide?
Well, the first thing they need to do is, call, if that person's local, crisis center up here in Tampa, actually about 5 minutes from here. If they're a local crisis center, call that number is right away. And then if they're not in Tampa, every city has a crisis line,
Okay.
every city. If that's not the case, go ahead and call 911 because they will Baker Act them. And Baker Act, is 72 whole, Rita? Is it 72 or 40?
72.
72, okay, so they'll put them in a 72, which is, 3 days or 72 hold, in a facility, just to make sure that they are not going to harm themselves or others.
Okay. Another one. Who is at the highest risk for suicide?
So the highest risk right now are, people who have lost their jobs, or have been jobless since COVID. And then the second group, I would think, would be, teenagers who, are being bullied and families not aware of it.
Okay. So is suicide related to impulsiveness?
No, usually someone that's going to commit suicide has everything planned out. Unless there are a few times where, it's a girlfriend-boyfriend, fight,
Okay.
and the male usually, commits suicide.
Oh wow.
And that's impulsive, that's considered impulsive.
Okay.
I've had 2 of those.
Oh wow. So ADHD would be behavioral, not mental, would it? Or it would be in between?
ADHD, is behavioral.
Behavioral.
Uh-huh.
But I hear there's no cure for it.
It's not, but I will tell you, Adderall is a wonder drug.
Yes, but they say that the long time effect of that is like you have heart issues and all that. Like, do they stay on it for a long time, or there's like
No.
a switch?
Yeah, they make you switch.
Okay.
Yeah, they make you switch. And I will tell you, Adderall is very hard to get. And the doctors don't like to prescribe it because what has happened is your white privilege patients use it for to do better on the focus, and most of college students. When I tried to get my son to see someone in Tallahassee where he was in school, they're like, well, we're not giving Adderall. Because and even here at USF, because they think that kids are just getting it to focus on their school, which is, my son did much better in school when he was on it, so I understand why it works. But he needed it. Those other kids didn't really need it. They were just getting it so they can stay focused on and pass tests and get like a special accommodation on tests. Because if you're on Adderall, you can get special accommodations to take a test, meaning you have more time to take your test. You can go as long as you need to without, if it's a class period of an hour, you can take 4 hours to take that one test instead of 1 hour. So it's been abused. It really has. Yeah. But it works.
So are there biological factors that increase risks of suicide?
I would say that's a very good question. Honestly, there's really not the only thing I would consider bio would be if they have dementia, Alzheimer's, or they're taking care of someone who
with
has
that.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's just education, because there's so many facilities that can do that, and but families don't want to give it up, give into that, unless they're going to get a check. That's the problem too. So, yeah.
So for someone who's come from like a line of like people that's committed suicide, like how do you like tackle that subject with the person? Let's say that they knew that their grandfather committed suicide, they knew that their mother committed suicide, but now just 2 siblings and one's trying to talk to the other because she sees that, or he sees that
Right.
the mood is changing and all that. Like, how do you tackle that conversation with that person?
Well, first and foremost, they definitely need some clinical, counseling. They
Okay.
definitely need some.
Okay.
And that counselor should help them realize that just because it happened to their loved one, that it's not gonna happen to them. Because in most cases like that, that was an acute case where that was not planned out. That just happened, and I don't think it was anything physiological to make that happen, which means that there's no gene for suicide. It's not something that's gonna be passed
Right,
down. It's not a
okay,
gene.
okay.
That situation, because I'm sure you saw on the news, there have been times where the father and mother and killed, and then and there have been times where we've had older people who they gave up. They had, Alzheimer's or dementia, and the man would shoot the wife and shoot himself because they just were tired of living like that. So whereas the children won't probably have that mindset that we're gonna be like that too, is because that situation was an acute situation, meaning they didn't really think about it, they just did it, So most suicides are pretty much planned, unless it's an acute situation.
So, I feel like I'm asking this question. Does anyone have
No,
questions?
go ahead.
Oh, okay. Because I've read that some people, when they feel better, they try to commit suicide as well. So like what's going on there?
They're not really feeling better. That's when you start getting the signs that they're gonna do it. And it seems like they're doing better.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we hear, we hear that a lot with the parents and husbands and wives. It's like, he was doing so good, and we went to eat, we had lunch together, we did all this shopping. That's a sign. Because if they normally were not like that, and then all of a sudden they're like doing stuff that they normally wouldn't do, that's a sign. It's not like they're feeling better, it just means they're preparing that person or people for what's gonna come. So that's a sign. But it does seem like they're doing better, but it's really not. It's like the calm before the storm. It's like when you see sick people that's about to die, they get their last little, they seem like, oh, they're doing so good, and then they die.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because some people, like, oh, they're getting better.
Yes.
They're sick, oh,
Yes.
they're just getting better. Then suddenly just die.
And they die,
So
yeah.
then they're not
Yeah, it
getting-
happens.
yes.
It happens. All of a sudden they get better, and the family gets excited, and then they die the next day.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that happens.
So can suicide be rational?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It absolutely can be.
Hmm.
Yeah, and actually a lot of them are. A lot of them are not mental health. It's just like that the elderly suicides we see, to them is rational, because I've been married to this woman for 60 years, I don't want her to suffer. She's suffering and I'm suffering because I have to take care of her. Or they said she only has a month to live. What am I gonna do after she dies? I have no purpose in life. I took care of her. So I'm gonna shoot her and put us out of our misery.
So what if you try to get someone help and still they don't want it? What do you do?
There's nothing you can really do. When someone plans to commit suicide, they plan it and they're gonna do it regardless. I don't care what you say to them, they're gonna do it. The only thing you can do is when you know that they're talking about it, yes, you can try to intervene, and keep an eye on them, unless you're with them 24/7, if they have made up their mind they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it.
And we say is by the grace of God then, because I know that I'm gonna kind of use it with the Bible, okay? When someone made up his mind that this is what I want to do, no matter what you tell that person, he wants to do what he wants to do. Do I use it as someone that have known the Lord and decided to backslide? Bringing them back is very, very difficult, because they will tell you, I know the word of God, and they have already made up their mind that this is the way they want to go.
Yep, you're right. Yeah, they've already made their mind. And now, if you can, again, call the police and My niece she was on Facebook and talking about how despondent she was, she didn't want to live. And my sister and my niece went to Walmart and they followed her, they showed up in the parking lot. And, my sister was like, what's wrong? And she said, well, we received a call that, she doesn't want to, she's going to commit suicide. I'm like, what is that about? And then they told her, are you okay? Do you need to go to, it's a place on 22nd and Hillsborough. That's where all if you think of suicide or whatever. And she's like, no, I'm okay, I was just saying that. They're like, okay, we just want to make sure. So, yeah. So I would call a crisis center, or I would call 911.
Okay.
Because the cops will, like I said, they met her in the parking lot. We're just checking on you. You said on social media that you were gonna commit suicide. And she's, she has severe depression and she's on medication. So they will follow up. But that place where we're talking about is, helps a lot with the 72-hour hold when someone is in severe depression or talking about suicide. It's right there, 22nd and Hillsborough. It changes names so many times I can't remember the name of it now.
What happens when suicide things myself is not planned but spontaneously done?
Yeah, and that's called an acute. So, if let's say my husband dies, and I'll say, you know what, I just can't live without him. My kids are gonna be okay. They're grown, they can take care of themselves, and I'm just gonna kill myself. I'm just gonna take all my medications and just kill myself because he's dead. So that's called an acute.
In my case, when I tried to commit suicide, I didn't plan it, but I heard a voice in my ear that said, step out of this.
Okay.
Distraction.
Yeah.
What would you call that?
I would say that's an acute. Yeah. It's an acute suicide. So we call it acute suicidal ideation. Meaning it was like, okay, you just did it. Now, if you heard it in your head and then you went to do it, but you said no.
No, I didn't.
And yeah, now if someone knew that, like if you're telling me now and that happened to you, and I saw you, I'm like, you know what, you need to go maybe get checked out because you heard something.
That was years ago.
Okay, good. But like I said, now that you said, I'm not gonna tell on you now, but if you talked about it then, it's like, okay, well, if you heard a voice, you might want to get checked out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes that inner voice may be something more mentally acute and going on in your head that you need to go see a psychologist to see if something's wrong with you mentally to prevent you from actually carrying out that. Because if you already think of it, you're going to keep thinking of it. You're not going to just stop thinking about it. Yeah. But yeah, it's just a matter of how much you put into it, planning it.
Yeah, well, I did go see a psychiatrist.
Good.
I was crying a lot, so I did go see one time. And after that, I just left the situation. Sometimes you gotta leave the situation that's causing that problem. And you separate yourself from that person in another state.
And we call that root. I applaud you for doing that, because so many women don't do that. But that's called a root cause. And good psychiatrists will dig you into that root cause. Why were you thinking about that in the first place? What was causing you to have that ideation? So that means you had a good person and you removed yourself from the situation, which is good. So it's good to have that. That's why, again, I'm sure you were spiritual then as well. You gotta have that mental health person. Not saying your pastor at the time did not help, but you gotta have that mental health person to help you in addition to your spiritual leader. Because nothing against spiritual leaders, they're not gonna tell you that and help you get away from that situation. But it's very important to remove yourself from that situation. But yeah, that's a root cause. And a lot of our, the suicide African Americans I have seen, I've only had one to COVID, but, it is most of the time, it's either sexuality or, a lot of just being despondent and depressed about different things, so, we just need to be more aware of that, especially in the Black church. Very, very important for that. But the root cause, and if they had gone to see a mental health professional, then they probably would not have been despondent as they are right now, especially now with and if you look at a spectrum of how things are starting and how things are evolving, like right now the focus is on transsexual people. So, but if you also notice, those people have been either killing themselves or men are killing them. So we do have seen some. I know I've had 2 transsexuals who committed suicide, and I've had 2 that was killed. There's many more than that, but I've only had 2. So that's gonna, as environmental also is a cause. So as our society and as a whole identifies a problem that we're having, which is trans, then you'll see the suicides will change with it. So environmental meaning COVID, we saw a lot of people get laid off jobs. And then just being in the house, locked up, but you couldn't go anywhere for a year. So a lot of people did it because oh my God, I'm home by myself with the kids, and then I got to school, and my husband doesn't help, or, and then we had the transsexual things that happen over evolving. Now we have the politics involved that people are just depressed about. You turn on the TV, all you see is riots and stuff on. So there's all kind of environmental issues that cause people to be in these situations, such as depression, anxiety, acute incident, despondency, guilt, and hopelessness. And the addictions, obviously there's a problem with that as well. Addictions are a big problem. So if you have family, friends, and loved ones who struggle with addictions, please get them help as well. But remember, they have to want the help. If they don't want the help, you've got to work really hard with them, because there's so many people that have addictions. And addictions does not just mean drugs and alcohol.
Thank you.
It can mean a lot of different things. Addictions can be, I have a friend that I know she's addicted to Amazon because she shops all the time, and she doesn't have the money to support her addiction of shopping. I know that sounds crazy, but there's so many other things out there. But addictions are not just drugs and alcohol. It is a lot of other things to be addicted to. Food, for some of us like me, but I'm a foodie. But there are so many other things that. So again, the biggest thing is just listen out, listen to someone, and then if you guys feel, if you feel any of this, reach out to your spiritual leaders, and just be open and honest with yourself. Like you said, you have to rely on people to help you, and don't feel like no one should feel like they are going to they can't talk to you because they don't want you to be judgmental. They want to keep your secret. You all have to be receptive of that. So if somebody comes to you, don't get on the phone, as soon as they talk to you and you tell everybody in the church. And that's what she means by being afraid, because we don't want everybody in church to know our business. And Rita and I experienced with the hospitals, before we couldn't let visitors in, we've had visitors in, and we had to give a code to the family, because the family is like, I don't want this person doesn't know our business, so don't let this person in to the patient. And it's because we have historically loved to hear the business of other people. So don't ever let anyone in your church feel like they can't come to you and discuss anything because they fear that you're gonna go tell everybody else, okay? Be there supportive for them, because they need you, especially now. We're going through so much right now, so.
Yeah, like what you just said, I see it actually in the church, because a lady was said to me, okay, she came through someone,
Uh-huh,
okay, to me, and she was able to open up,
uh-huh,
but after she opened up, she said, please, don't tell anyone. Don't let the lady that sent me to you to know. I said, no, I don't do that.
yeah,
Yeah, because people are scared.
right,
They don't want their stories to go everywhere.
yes,
And mostly, if you're a spiritual leader too, you're like a doctor.
right,
You know, you're not supposed to tell
right,
somebody's story out there.
Right.
Let me use a doctor, maybe that helps a woman to put to bed,
right,
to deliver. Okay, you see a lot
uh-huh,
as a doctor.
right,
I mean, you won't go out there and begin to tell patient or friends,
Right.
oh, this is the way she looks.
Uh-huh.
This is, so that's what it is. So
Right.
like you said, we have to open up, mostly also if you don't want, your spiritual leader is very, very important and very close to you. Don't say, I'm not going to call, I'm not going to, by the time we know it, there's something has happened to the person,
right.
which is not right. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just not here, it's every
It's everywhere.
faith-based in any church or wherever. And people should feel comfortable, and I noticed you guys had prayer hours there, prayers and things on. People should feel comfortable coming to their spiritual family, and it's okay to say, please don't say this to anyone else, or, I'm coming to you in faith, and it's so important, because that's how people get depressed, that's how people be distrustful of other people, because they are scared to tell their story, they're scared to ask for help, and it's because there's so much distrust. So you all have to really make people feel comfortable, and hey, it's okay, you can trust me, and we'll work together on finding a solution. So, and that really works, it really does. Just like you were sharing with us, it's very helpful for us to have that ear. We have to be an active listener. So if anything you learned today is just be an active listener for people. And you as well, make sure you communicate to people if there's something, going on, because it's so important, it really is. And I've seen too many deaths that could have been prevented had someone just listened or saw the signs and didn't pick up on it, And then after it happened, everyone's like, oh my gosh, we didn't know, we had no idea. And especially when it's a kid, I mean, the social media is just, I don't know.
Yeah, actually, one of our speakers, I was gonna kind of think on that. That's the one thing he wanted to talk to parents about social media.
Good.
He didn't know his child was involved.
Yep.
It was, and he said, that phone, that's why he wanted to talk to parents about.
Yeah, I
Couldn't make it.
It's horrible. It's just, and it goes back to the things I talked about, the body image and the bullying and telling them they're not worth anything and your hair was horrible and you did this. And for kids who are already borderline, especially during puberty, middle school is rough, high school is bad, but not as bad as middle school. You have, especially, we remember going in puberty, middle school, it's already bad because your bodies are changing. And, kids they look different than when we were in school, but it's just horrible, some of the things that the kids are told and how they look and, and who they are, and, yeah. Which is why they're starting to charge people now, literally arresting kids now for doing stuff like that, so. Yep, they are. So.
I have a comment, says, it seems that we have become so disengaged from each other in society and don't care who dies during this pandemic. The expectation is that people should recover from their losses and get back to life quickly.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. I think it's because we have become numb to death and dying and illness, because we see it so much. Whether you watch TV or social media, it doesn't matter. It's been very overwhelming, and I think we've just all become so numb of it happening. And the only thing we can do is just control, you know, all access to what you want to watch. I mean, I choose to get on Twitter because I like to watch the news and stuff, but as a society, we have gotten numb to the things that are what I consider bad things that happen to us. Just look at all the shootings we've had. It's just horrible. So the best way that I handle that is to just select and choose what you watch and how you respond to things, and how you how you choose to watch and take in your information and moderate it. Watch it as much as you want, but it's horrible. We have, especially being in the hospitals, it's if we have one COVID person die, it's like, I'm saying it's oh well, but it's like, okay, well, there's another one, so it's just,
Cold.
it's cold, yeah, it's like, you build up this wall, and it's like, okay,
Something becomes too much.
who's next, so, but yeah, and also, I was watching it yesterday, and they were talking about the COVID, and it's really worse now because J&J was the vaccine that African Americans were choosing, and because of the one shot, and then now that is being questioned, now it's going to be even worse that African American communities are not
Let's go out there.
doing the vaccination at all. So, as being in the hospitals, I see that our population is mostly African American that have gotten COVID. So it's information overload, basically. And all we can do is cope with feeling and hope. Especially the funerals I think for us, the biggest thing for us is the funerals, because we have such limitations on funerals that we're not used to. So that's big too.
As a question, why do some people become suicidal while others with similar risk factors do not?
I think just by reading some of the letters that have suicide notes that I've read, I think it all depends on the environment, how they were raised, the communication between them, between parents or spouses, and how the parents raised them, and the communication before is very important. We noticed that if the parents were more hands-on, then the risk of suicide is very, very, very low. For the African American community, it was, like I said, we mostly is more involved with the sexuality of the person. It was the high risk there is that they felt that they were not accepted, and again, it goes back to the family upbringing. Was it a family that was, again, close to the parents? Were the parents hands-on? Did the parents listen? Did the parents shun the child? And if they're already mentally unstable in the sense of the fact that they were not able to communicate effectively, or they were already, they could have had an undiagnosed mental illness, then that also contributes to that. So I think the bottom line for determining how people react and who are suicidal, it always leads back to two things. One being the environment they're raised in, and two, how effective the parents listen to them and communicated with them.
Okay. Also, if you ask someone about suicide, is it possible that you're putting the idea in their head?
No, because you're not asking them specifically, are you committing suicide, or you want to commit suicide?
Like,
You shouldn't say
feel
that. You should
Okay.
say how are you feeling? Do we need to talk? Do you need to talk about anything? How are you feeling? That's why you never should bring up, are you going to commit suicide?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you're not going to plant in their head to do it, but it will it's a bad approach to make. You're just gonna ask them, like if they give you their favorite jerseys, is there anything okay to me to talk? I know this is your favorite shirt, so I'm just curious why you're giving it to me. So you're indirectly to asking them for suicide, but you're not saying, are you gonna commit suicide? That means they're already probably mental unstable, but that's gonna push them over the edge if you ask them. So it's a different approach. Is that you are telling them, you are asking them they're gonna commit suicide, but you're not straight directly asking them. You're just asking them, hey, why did you give me this shirt? I know you love this shirt. So you just kind of pull that information out of them without coming out and saying, are you gonna commit suicide?
So when you say about suicide, it doesn't matter your color, African American committed, and the white suicide, right?
I'm saying say that again.
African American commit suicide,
Uh-huh.
the white commit suicide, not just the black. Right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, what I want to ask is, we are all blacks, and I'm from Africa, okay, to this place. Back home, parents don't bring up their children the way it's done here, because it's difficult for children to talk to their parents. They don't have the time. They can't sit down to hear you, but but what they are there for, they can hear you, they tell you anything, but they don't commit suicide. Do you understand?
I think that's the environment thing she was talking about, because it's so much rampant here with people killing, with children and adults killing themselves than in Africa.
In Africa,
yes, and it's harder. Like the discipline is borderline abuse. Like people are publicly shamed. Some of the factors that most people commit suicide over or are not accepted and all that, but like suicide is not like what they go to.
Well, and notice I said that suicide increased in the early 2000s and actually I would say 2010 and up. It's because like my parents were both educators, and they said immigration was the worst thing that happened to black folks, because these kids are so disrespectful. Things have changed. We didn't, before 2010 or 11, I may have had one black person commit suicide. And after that, it just like, boom, fast forward. It was like, where are they coming? Like, where are they? Because we never did it. We never. And even, like, I got spankings when I was little. I got little spankings. And we didn't think, we were mad. Okay, y'all, you sit over there by, you be mad, you'll get over it. I got it. So that's why you didn't see, and it was okay to spank your child in public. Okay, and that's how most black folks were. But you have these young girls, having children and raised in that generation where, don't you even touch your child, because they're going to call HRS and all them on you for hitting your child and calling it abuse. So the rise, I think, in black is that now you can't touch your kid, because if you touch them, you'll get arrested. My mom and dad would have been in jail if they had caught them beat on me, because I got hit. So I think the whole dynamics of disciplining a child has changed a lot, and that is in direct correlation to the bringing up of black kids who are now committing suicide. Because we didn't used to do that. We didn't do that. I'm 51, and I just, over the last couple of years, we just didn't think of suicide. I think it's happening more and more now because just being around them. We didn't do it, but now we are. But it's more unintentional.
I think because parents are not as in tune with their children.
They're not.
So children are at a point where they say, my parents doesn't care anything about me. They don't care if I go out, what time I get back in.
Because they're young.
And So this would give them a thought of saying, they don't care about me, so why should I care about myself?
Exactly, because these kids are young, the moms are young.
Yes.
You know, you've got a 30-year-old mom, or you got a 40-year-old mom. I'm sorry, she has the kid at 16 or 17, you know, and so now you have a young mom, and now she doesn't care because she's young, and she's either staying with grandma, but she's also the mom who, she's 16 or 17, she doesn't know what to do, and now she's 33 now, the child is 17 or 16. He doesn't respect, she doesn't take care of him like a mom would, you know, and like you said, you know, when my mom doesn't care about me, I don't know where my dad is, he's probably in jail, you know, and you're right, I mean, so, for them, if my mom doesn't care for me, because all she cared about, because she had me young, now she want to go out and party with everybody, she might be on drugs, she everything she could have done when she was 16 and 17, she couldn't because of the baby, now at 33, she's going to do it. And my mom doesn't care about me, so I gotta, you know, who do I have around? My big mama died, so who do I have now to take care of me? Who's gonna want me? Even when I'm with my mom, all she does is give me Hot Pockets, and I put them in, that's for dinner, and she may be working, or she might out be partying or whatever. So why? And you're right, that's why we see these kids, because we never saw this, because we discipline our children, you know. And so that's where the difference is, that the parents, they're young parents, and and then they probably came from the same situation where their mother was young. So, I mean, you got 40-year-old grandmothers. Yeah, it's a generation, and it's cyclical, it goes round and round and round, and it just.
And they have to make up in their mind that they want to cut that generational curse. Let it start with me is what they really should be saying.
Right.
And that curse will be cut.
Right.
But if you're not going to curse, you're just going to keep going around in a circle.
It's
that curse is still
yeah. And the sad thing is, the resources were there. I mean, years ago, when I was working with juvenile justice, there was even there was daycare on each school. And so you could bring your baby to school and you'd be in a daycare, and the daycare was staffed by kids who wanted to go into daycare, you know, teach daycare, and then, or they would go to cosmetology school, or wherever. The daycares were on campus. So there was no reason, you can't say, well, I don't have childcare, I can come to school. No, you have childcare on campus, you can get your diploma, you know, some of them graduated to CNA school, so they were able to do CNA. The opportunities were there. But, like you said, the moms, they're young, and they just probably acting like they didn't want to be there with their kids, and those kids feel despondent, you know. And again, like I said, the other thing was just the sexuality, and you know, and sometimes it's an experiment, and that's another thing that moms say, oh, she's just experimenting. Okay, that may be true, but you never know how she was feeling. Did you accept her the way she is? You know, and these kids are very open about it. You go to the two predominantly black high schools right now in Tampa. If you stand in the hallway for 5 minutes, you're going to see at least 10 same-sex couples.
Yeah.
At least 10. Now, probably 5 of that 10 are experimenting, and they're not truly that way, but it's the thing to do right now.
Yeah, I was in education before I retired, and that's what I saw. I mean, I've literally had to confront some of these people
Yeah.
to let them know, hey, you're talking to the wrong person. You better step off, go back to your classroom, and get out of my face, because I will lose my job over you.
Well, good for you for standing up to them.
And I have a problem out of that anymore. So yes, I'll lose my job over you. You will not stand in my face and disrespect me. I'll lose my job. Period. Now go back to your classroom.
Yeah, these kids are not.
And I had no more problem out of them. I even had kids standing up for me. You mess with Miss Jefferson, you mess with me.
Oh, yeah. Now, once they get your respect like that, you stand up to them, you won't have any problems out of you.
So I just put up with it. It just showed that I cared. I cared about them, and I just was not going to let you do that to me and to yourself.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you have to stand up for yourself, especially now these kids are bad. And their mamas, the parents are worse.
about, they had resources back then. I'm a young, I was a young parent, and, I had a sick child. And, I was fighting to get her home, and I didn't have the help. So, the social worker that I had, I was going to court, and she took me to the room, and she was telling me that, well, you're not a bad parent and all that, because we had some kind of, before that, we had some kind of like bumping heads on spanking your child, because my daughter was standing on the edge of it's a window in the courthouse. There was an edge that you could stand and look out the window. I told her, don't stand on there. I won't take on the, she was, riding us. I was taking her back from spanking. The lady seen it. And she was like, oh, you gonna, spank him too? Her son. And I'm like, no, he's sick. Why would I do that? And she just was all over me. So recently, I called the, adoption agency to be, rejoining our son. And they told me that she never put the paperwork in. And this lady was at me. 1 minute she's really nice, and 1 minute she wasn't. So even though that the help was out there, I guess I had the wrong help, because the last time I spoke to her, she told me to move on with my life and stop trying to find my son.
Oh.
So I'm glad you said that, because I want people to know what I am going through as a young parent, and what I had went through. I didn't spank my children, because I was afraid of losing them and him.
Right.
She had me to sign a paper. She said, well, this is your only choice. Sign this paper, put him up for adoption, doing the best thing for him. And I cried like a baby. And I signed the paper. I was like, oh my God, I don't have a family here. I don't have nobody to help me. I don't have anything else to do. So I have no choice. So right now, today, I'm still, my son is 34. I don't know where he at. He don't even know how I'm living. I don't even know what he's like.
Wow.
So recently, with the COVID and stuff, I said, well, let me go ahead, and it been 03. I have put in paperwork. They said she never put it in. I got a copy of it and everything. And I'm okay.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I understand that the resources out there, like maybe the person, I'm still scared for right now that the person might be still in that business, that, in the, social work and, and telling the other people, oh no, don't give her, don't tell her nothing. I don't know, what do I do?
Oh, no, you need to, you can find them through, because you went to the government, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they should have records, yeah.
They have records,
They
but
have-
they told
yeah.
me that they have to have proof that I'm his legal. I mean, what?
You don't
proof
have
he
any,
was on the news.
you don't have
I almost
paperwork?
died, I have his birth certificate, Social Security, I have everything. The lady
Yeah.
has all that. But when she was like, she was talking to me, she was like saying, oh, I'm sorry, I think you was that little young child that used to be, I forgot, that, you're not that young child anymore. So she was taking me back, that I didn't know any better as a young parent, I wasn't a bad parent, just a young parent, So now that I'm older, and I was trying to, keep my calm, because I know if I would have
Yeah,
asked her rational, I wouldn't have got any information. And she wound up saying, oh, they didn't contact me. So why you didn't call me and tell me that?
yeah, you need, they probably, I'm sure they have the records of you, of, what your situation is. I would just keep trying. And don't worry about don't worry about her.
Yeah, it was the
Because she
point,
doesn't have to be, she might not even be there anymore, but, yeah, she can't stop you from being that, so they should have the records.
It was the point that, when we were saying that the help was out there, and we were young parents, and we had children in this cycle. Now my children had children young, and now they feel they going through mental, problems. They don't know. You young, and parents not there, father not there.
Right.
Everybody don't know what to do. So
Yeah,
it's just
I would,
like you said, like a cycle.
yeah,
And the help was out there. And one way, they
Yeah.
didn't want to help me. I had to walk miles to see, he was in foster care. Miles, like a big old street with my 2 little babies, girls. And they will pick up the white girl. They will pick her up. And she was pregnant with another child, and her baby's in foster care with, the lady was taking care of like 3 foster kids. And I had to walk like a quarter of a mile to get to her house. And it's nothing but big old trucks in the rain. and they would not pick me up. The lady told the lady, she said, I could go pick up and bring her here. There was 2 women there. She said, no, she needs to learn, no, I can sue her if she gets into an accident with us in the car, coming from, the bus stop to, her house, but the bus stop didn't go further to her house. It was just a mess.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why would they do her like that? And I didn't find out because the lady told me. They said, we picked up the other lady. She didn't say nothing about that. So they must have knew the lady had probably some prejudice going on. So, and it's a mess. And it's just like you said, it's a cycle. We have who's young. We have children. Now my children's young. And I think that's because when you stop spanking the kids, because my mother spanked me, like you said, our mother spanked us.
Yeah.
We ain't have the thoughts. We might have said bad things under our breath or whatever. We didn't have the thoughts. But it is a time in society that people just, it's just so much, they
hurt.
It probably go beyond what we're talking about now.
That's okay. I think you should start the process again and locating the records from foster care, and there's various ways to find him. I mean, you need social media. Where I work, we actually use social media to find people, family and stuff. So I would certainly start the process again, and hopefully, you can reunite him if he wants to be. Sometimes they don't want to be, but they have records.
She told me he was mentally incapacitated. So how he know I exist? He don't even know I'm looking for him. Even if he was, what would be the problem if I went to see him? I even told her, put me behind a glass. I just want to see him.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you would be, even if he's not able to be, to meet with you. I think your heart would be complete if you actually knew where, if he was alive and where he is. So I would just go through foster care and start the process of finding.
It's called the family reunion. Well, yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
I did that.
Okay.
And I'm waiting on a response. The only thing they said they have proof that I'm looking for family. So I don't know how they do that.
Well, you said they had the birth certificate and all that, right?
No, I did. I don't know what they got.
Oh.
No, I did.
Oh,
They
okay.
said it was supposed to have been the foster parents supposed to put them on the list to find me, but they didn't. So how do they know I'm supposed to look for them if nobody telling them nothing? So I've been doing this for years. Every year I was going to her and asking her how he doing. She would tell me how he was doing, but she said I can't tell you what he is. I said I understand that, and I appreciate it. But one minute she's doing this, and the next minute she's doing
So you do. So
Can't you go over her head?
Have you been meeting just one person all this year?
Is that me?
Have you been meeting
You've been working with the same lady all these years?
I was for 18 years, and then she said she put the paperwork in there with his name, my name, his father's name, my social security, and then I just fill out a paper with everybody. He got nieces, nephews, he got a big family.
Well, I would just maybe do a different person, not just her. Do a different
No, I'm not
person.
doing with her now. No.
Exactly.
But I'm just, like I said, I was just afraid that she might be still in that.
I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about that. Yes, yeah. I wouldn't worry about that. If it is, you go to a different person.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for this because I feel like a lot of things, a lot of problems are out of ignorance. So like if we're informed, we're able to inform the people around us and in our community that this would be beneficial too. So
Yes.
yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Anytime.
And we're like a body, and I think that as Christians, we tend to focus on the hand part. I said the hand part, which is like the godly approach only. But for the whole body to work, every part has to play, do its part. Every part of the body has to do what they're supposed to do for the body to be in full function. So if we're going to tackle something spiritually, we should also, like she said, visit, like, get clinical help, get whatever help is needed, but let everything come together. Let it be like all parts have been, let it be a whole. All parts have been played so that the result can be substantial and good.
Absolutely.
Oh, I have one more comment before we go. It says, that is so true. Many people don't feel comfortable in the church expressing their concerns or issues because of judgmentism, but it's important to create an environment of truth and acceptance that is going to take time because of the different backgrounds of each other's. seeing that there is much mental health issues in our community, how can we approach this in the church? How can we help? Where do we start?
Okay, so I think first and foremost, the bottom line is trust and communication. And as far as who should talk to in the church, I think it depends on the church. And I don't know if y'all have, I don't know if y'all have a ministry for health, or do you have a health ministry by any chance? No?
But that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, yeah, I would do like a health ministry to start, just to kind of pull all kinds of, you know, people in the health ministry, and that would be a start. Or if you can't get a ministry together, if you have someone who works in that field of mental health, identify that person. And then for community-based programs, you can gather the resources and provide those resources to your congregation. So, for instance, the crisis center. I think it's whatever, I can't remember the place name that does acute care where you would wake back someone. I'll forget that. Rita, I'll send you that name. I can't remember it offhand.
Is it
It's something
Baycare?
point. It's something point.
Grace
Grace Point, that's it, yes. So information about Bay Point. So compile a list of mental health options and have that resource for all of your members. So yeah, that one, and crisis center. There's the community places for mental health, there's a lot of them. But I do always suggest people use I want to save people money, so I always ask people to go to their child's school first, if they have it. The bad part about going to the school though is it usually it's like a 4 to 6 month wait for that.
Oh, wow.
So if you're working, go to your EAP, your Employee Assistance Program, to see if it's covered or free or covered by your insurance. Most insurance companies don't cover like educational training or screening. So like if you're trying to get your child, see if they're gifted or if they need special classes, they don't usually cover that. So, but they'll cover mental health. And they'll also give you one-on-one sessions. It's usually up to 3 for free. So you can look into that. And then you also have private practice, which is a little bit more expensive. And that way you can use community-based programming if you're not comfortable talking to someone in the community, or in the church. But again, I really can't stress enough that you utilize someone in the church, because that's where you can get your spiritual leader approach, or spiritual person that you trust.
Okay.
And your job one may not be called employee assistance or EAP, but whatever look at your benefit package, and find out the right name for that. And then there's always, like, if you call the health department, there's also community-based, free, through Medicaid, Medicare, or even your insurance company has some too. So if you're on Medicaid, Medicare, they provide mental health as well. But please utilize it. I know it's a struggle for Black folk, because for years we didn't believe in going talking to a shrink, as they call it. We didn't want to talk to a shrink. That's what Big Mama's for. You go talk to Big Mamas, or talk to Deacon Smith, or Pastor Charles. I understand that. You can still do that, but we have to include mental health. I cannot stress that. And if that turns into medication, it works. It really does work. And depending on what the situation is, it does work really well. And you can do that in conjunction with your spiritual leader, as I said earlier. But it does amazing things. And, I hear people say all the time, I'm not taking that, I'm not taking a medication I don't know about, or, I'm not trusted, or, well, if you take other medications for high blood pressure and cholesterol and diabetes, you trust the doctor to take, you took that medicine from the doctor, so what's the difference? Same thing with vaccine, people are like, I'm not gonna get the vaccine, I don't trust it. Well, you take medications for your other stuff, diabetes, high blood pressure. You didn't say that you didn't trust that, but you took it because your doctor gave it to you, right? So, think about that as well. You can be here another hour talking about the vaccine, but that's a personal decision.
So, deal with children depression.
That's a tough one, because kids don't talk. I really can't stress enough how kids, especially like between 12 and I would say 17, kids don't like to talk, especially if they're in middle school age, 12 to 14. So you really have to observe them and listen to them. And that's a really critical time for bullying and body image. Their bodies are changing, they have acne, their periods start, and you know, they're going through puberty. They don't have big breasts like the other girls have them, and yeah, it's horrible. And so you really have to take the time to talk to them. It's also very important for girls to have a male figure in their life. And the reason why that's so important is because they're getting attention from boys, or not getting attention from boys, or they're being teased and bullied by boys. So it's important for them to be able to identify with a male figure so that they are not really finding that love and acceptance from another 13, 14-year-old boy. And I'm saying that because that's what a lot of kids will say, and when these girls start being sexually active or dressing some kind of way, it's because they're getting attention from that 12, 13, and 14-year-old boy, and where they need to be getting not attention in that way, but they need to have a male figure to treat them as young ladies should be treated. So, you know, my husband and my daughter, he would take her on daddy dates, and they'd go out to dinner, and that's when he talked to him about opening the door. You know, they should open the door for you and get a car. You know, the conversation they should be having. So they need that positive male influence on them, because if they don't have it, again, they think they're gonna get it from a 12 or 13-year-old boy, and that's not always a good thing. It is not a good thing. And I will tell you some of the things these 12, 13, 14-year-old kids are doing, you're not gonna believe it.
Yeah, because social media is a thing too. Like everything is just controlled by what they see, and it's so easy to have access to all this, all these things that our parents and our grandparents talked about, like it's a taboo. It's just with a click of a button, and now it just pops up on our phones.
Yeah.
So.
Nude pictures. Tell your sons, if they spread a nude picture of somebody, they can get arrested. They can get arrested for that. Sharing a nude photo of a girl. And then a girl needs to know, okay, yeah, she just sent it to her friend, but you know what, that same friend is spreading it all around the school and all over the United States. So, you know, it's just very difficult. And then for a boy, a mom has to be there strong as well. Because you know what, he may be like the skinniest kid in the school, which is one of my last donor cases I had. He's small for a 12-year-old because of a congenital defect. And the kids, you know, the girls they were just as rude because they pretended to like him and wouldn't even like ask him for the middle school dance, knowing good and well it was a joke. And he got all dressed up to go, and the girl didn't show up. So what does he do? He goes upstairs and hangs himself in the closet.
No.
So women, it's important for you too to be that woman or that girl in his life that adores him, that praises him no matter what, you know. So it's very important to do that.
A lot of work to be done. A lot of work to be done.
A lot. Yeah, it's like she said, social media is just really bad. We do without it.
Alright,
Thank you.
So did you cover everything?
Hmm?
Have you covered everything?
Yeah, I mean, as far as there's no questions, other questions?
I have a question. How do you deal with, like, how do you have a conversation with someone who has an addiction but they don't think is an addiction? Like, how do you talk to them about it, and how do you tackle it where it's not like a super sensitive topic?
Well, first of all, explain to them why you think they have the addiction. Because the first thing I say, what do you think I'm addicted to? And you tell them, well, I just noticed when we go out or whatever, say it's food, I just noticed when we go out, to eat, you order all this food, and it's a bit much for, that's a lot of food for one person. And then if they respond, well, I like all this food, I eat all this food, and then you'll tell them, well, I'm concerned because that's a lot of food for one person, and I just want to make sure that this food is not your focus in your life. And then, it may be a situation where, why do you say that? And say, well, it could be that you're addicted to food. And then you just let them respond the way they want to respond. If they respond, well, no, I like to eat, and it doesn't mean I'm addicted. And then you respond, well, yeah, it does, because does it make you happy? Well, yeah, I love to eat, it makes me happy. Well, that's an addiction.
Okay.
Because an addict is not going to, an addict never sees himself as an addict, they just see it as that they enjoy the stuff. And whatever it is, drugs or whatever, food. And and they don't realize it, so you call it to their attention is what you need to do. Because they don't see it as addiction, they see it as, it's just something good they like to do with their body, or it's more than just being comfort food, going to Cracker Barrel eating a stack of pancakes. That I know.
Okay.
Or Kiki's.
Okay. That's awesome. Alright, let's read.
Another question?
David has a question.
David, you have a question?
How common is it for anger to lead to suicide?
Oh, that's a good question. It happens, but usually after, that's an acute situation. So my girlfriend broke up with me, so I'll hang myself because I'm mad at her, and then get back at her for doing that. So those are usually acute, or, well, the divorce is final, or I got served papers, and I'm mad, so I'm gonna go hang myself in her garage. So it happens pretty often.
The person keeps saying that, oh, I hate everybody, I hate this, I hate the world, I hate that, I just wanna go.
That's a sign, and I would talk them through it. I think, well, why do you hate the world? Why do you hate people? What's going on? That's a clear sign, very clear sign.
People watching them,
Yeah. Try to talk them through it and find out. They have to give you a reason. Your goal is to give them a reason why they do it. And sometimes people just say that they're having a bad day. We all have our bad days. We all do. So you just have to help them realize. You just basically talk them out of it by just having them explain why they hate it and why they mad. You just de-escalate them is what you're doing. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's great time, great questions, very good questions. Rita knows how to get in touch with me. If you guys have any other questions?
Yes, when you say about the suicide stuff, so how do we help, maybe let's say, someone that want to commit suicide or something, how, try to talk the person out of it?
I would definitely find out why, why do they want to, what has happened to make you want to feel this way? So you want to talk them down, want to de-escalate them, to make them, wait, what happened, what made you feel this way? Is there anything I can, do to change your mind, or, if it gets to the point where, you haven't talked them down, then I would give them the number to the crisis center. I don't have it with me. And that's,
I already put it out.
oh, okay, perfect, thank you. And they're trained to talk, that's all they do, is train people how to talk people down from suicide, yeah.
Because we have this case, the juvenile kids, okay, when they came out from there, they committed suicide.
Oh, okay. Interesting. But yeah, crisis center is very good. And they're so, especially they've been very busy this week, or this month, this year with 2020. But they're pretty good.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. And like I said, Rita has my information. If you think of any questions later, just let me know. Rita, if you think of anything I can come again to do something, just let me know.
Who wanted to come again? I know.
Well, I cover a lot of things, so when Rita knows if anything else I can talk about, just let me know.
Okay.
So this has been great. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Great, well, Dory, we really appreciate you coming by.
Thank you.
It's been very informative, and I think we will probably would like to do it again, because just reminding ourselves, and we live in a community, just not too far, it's low income, and lot of things are going on,
Yeah.
and people having 2 or 3 jobs just to survive, not having time for children. So we, in the community, the